My friend, listen to me now. There is a war going on. Not a war fought with bombs or bullets, but a war being waged in the secret battlefield of your mind. Every day, every hour, there is a voice trying to whisper lies into your thoughts, poisoned ideas, dark suggestions, paralyzing fear, and tormenting confusion. These are not random thoughts. These are spiritual attacks. These are demonic spirits waging war against your peace, your destiny, and your connection with God. And if you do not rise up and fight back, they will continue to steal your joy, distort your identity, and drown your future in silence and defeat. But let me declare to you today, with all the fire in my bones, you do not have to bow to those voices. You do not have to live in fear. You are not a slave to those thoughts. You are not created to walk through life, shackled by anxiety, broken by worry, or tormented by what the enemy whispers in the darkness. You were created by God, and where God's presence abides, no demonic power can remain. The power of God is the weapon that silences every dark voice in your mind. And if you are willing to surrender to fight and stand in faith, God will tear down every stronghold and lift you up into victory. Let me tell you the truth, the whole truth. The first thing the enemy does is lie always. The enemy speaks only in deception. It tells you you're not good enough, that you'll never break free, that your past defines your future, and that God has abandoned you. But these are not your thoughts. They are implants of darkness. They are not the voice of God. Just because these thoughts enter your mind doesn't mean they belong there. You must learn to recognize what comes from God and what is demonic. And once you identify the source, you must take authority over it. Not tomorrow, not later, but now. There are people listening to me who have been tormented in silence for years. You walk around smiling, but inside you are being crushed by thoughts that feel like chains. You lie in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, unable to rest, unable to breathe fully, because something is screaming in your soul that you are not safe, not loved, not worthy. But hear me now, that voice is a lie from the pit of hell. God never told you that. God does not speak in fear. God does not torment his creation. God lifts you. God builds you. God speaks truth, clarity, power, and peace. Any voice that speaks otherwise is a demonic spirit, and it must be cast down by the power of God. And how do you silence it? Not with your own strength, not with positive thinking, not with affirmations or worldly self-help. You silence them by filling your heart and your thoughts with the sound of God's truth. Darkness cannot survive where the light of God is shining. You must let God's word be louder than your fear. Let his promises be louder than the voices of depression, anxiety, rage, or self-hatred. Speak God's truth out loud until it becomes the only voice that echoes in your soul. Don't be fooled. The enemy doesn't attack what doesn't threaten him. The fact that your mental attack means there is something powerful inside you. God placed something eternal within your spirit. And the enemy knows that if you ever come into agreement with what God has said about you, he has lost control over your life. That's why he targets your mind. Because if he can convince you to believe the lie, he doesn't have to lift a finger. He's already won. But not today, not this time. You're not going to be silent anymore. You're not going to suffer in silence anymore. It's time to fight back with the voice of God. Every time a liar rises up in your thoughts, you must open your mouth and declare the truth of God over it. Do not negotiate with fear. Do not cuddle the voices of confusion. Rebuke them. Tear them down. Replace them with the sound of God's glory. Say it out loud. My mind belongs to God. My peace belongs to God. My future is in God's hands. No weapon formed against me shall prosper. You cannot silence demonic spirits by simply ignoring them. Ignoring something does not make it disappear. You must confront it. And when you confront it in the name of God, it has no choice but to flee. The devil does not fear your talent, your money, or your education. He fears your surrender to God. He fears your obedience. He fears your prayers spoken from a pure heart. He fears your mind being washed by the truth that is your power. Let me ask you this. What thoughts have been haunting you? What lies have been echoing through your soul day and night? Have you allowed them to build a fortress in your thinking? Have you begun to accept them as your own voice? Because that's the greatest trick of all, when the enemy disguises himself as your own thoughts. But friend, you must wake up. Not every thought is your own. Some thoughts are planted by darkness to deceive you. You must become a guardian of your mind, guarded like a sacred place, because your mind is where your life is shaped. What you think becomes what you believe, and what you believe becomes what you live. So I say to you with urgency and love, cleanse your mind with the fire of God's truth. If you have to cry out to God every hour, do it. If you have to repeat His promises until they are burned into your heart, do it. If you have to remove yourself from toxic environments and sinful influences, do it. Your mind is not a playground for demons. It is a temple where God's glory is meant to dwell. Let nothing unclean take residence there. There is a sacred peace that comes when you surrender your thoughts to God. When you say, God, I cannot fight these thoughts alone. I need you to fight for me. I give you my fear. I give you my confusion. I give you every lie that's been whispered in my ear. Take my mind and purify it. And when you pray that with sincerity, God will answer. God does not ignore the cry of the broken. He rushes to the aid of those who call upon Him with a humble heart. He will restore your mind. He will give you thoughts of life, not death, of hope, not despair, of strength, not weakness. There is a spiritual cleansing that must take place. Some of you need to detox your mind from the poison of this world. The music you listen to, the shows you watch, the conversations you entertain, they all matter. They are not neutral. They are spiritual gates. Whatever you allow in through your eyes and ears takes root in your thoughts. And once it takes root, it grows through either life or death. So be careful, be vigilant. Demonic spirits are always looking for a doorway. Close the door, lock it, and throw away the key. Let your mind be flooded with the voice of God alone. Some of you have thought in silence for so long that you've forgotten what peace feels like. You've accepted the noise as normal, but I am here to tell you, it is not normal to live in torment. It is not God's will for you to wake up each day feeling anxious, angry, or hopeless. That is a counterfeit existence. God's plan is for you to have peace that surpasses understanding. But to have that peace, you must choose to silence every other voice but His. And I warn you, this battle is daily. You cannot fight it once and forget it. Demonic spirits are persistent, but so is God. If you stay surrendered to Him, if you walk with Him day by day, moment by moment, no power in hell can have dominion over you. You were not created to be defeated. You were created to be a vessel of God's power and authority. You were made to walk with your head held high, knowing that the same God who breathed life into you is fighting for you even now. So when those thoughts come, don't panic, pray. Don't retreat, resist. Don't agree. Stand firm. The more you fight, the weaker the voices will become. The more you fill your mind with God's truth, the more the lies will be drowned out. And before long, the very thoughts that once tormented you will be silenced. And in their place will be a calm that can only come from the holy presence of God. Friend, this is your time. This is your moment to rise up and take back your peace. Enough is enough. The voices of fear, shame, and confusion do not belong in your life. They have had their time. Now it's God's turn to speak. And when God speaks, demons tremble. When God speaks, confusion flees. When God speaks, your mind is restored and your soul is strengthened. Let God speak into your life today. Let His voice be the loudest one. Let His truth be your weapon. And watch as every demonic spirit that tried to break you is silenced by the thunder of God's power. Do not let your mind be a battleground any longer. Let it be a sanctuary. Let your thoughts be ruled not by fear but by faith. And remember, you are not alone. God is with you. He is near to the broken. He rescues the tormented. He heals the wounded. And He silences every voice that rises up against His child. That is the God you serve. That is the God who loves you. That is the God who loves you. That is the God and will never leave you. And that is the God and will silence every demonic spirit in your mind forever. Say to you again, let the voice of God thunder louder than the noise in your mind. Let it drown out every whisper that tells you that you are alone. You are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. You are not broken beyond repair. What you are is under attack, because the light of God is shining inside you. The enemy only comes where something valuable is present. If there was no fire in you, if there was no anointing upon your life, if there was no divine purpose stamped upon your soul, the enemy would not waste time sending spirits to torment you. But because God has called you, because God has chosen you, because God has placed something eternal inside of you, hell has declared war against your mind. But that war is not yours to fight alone. God is the defender of your mind. God is the guardian of your soul. And when you cry out to Him, He answers with fire. Listen to me with everything you've got. This is not just about emotions. This is not about positive thinking or mental health trends. This is about the spiritual world that surrounds your thoughts. Thoughts are seeds and spirits are constantly trying to plant them. Some come from the world, some come from your past, but many come from demonic spirits sent to destroy your alignment with God. You must not be passive about it. You must be fierce. You must stand at the gates of your mind like a watchman in the night, declaring nothing enters here unless it's from God. The key, my friend, is not just resisting the wrong thoughts, but replacing them with God's thoughts. Does God say about you? He says that you were formed in strength, created with divine intention, and made for a purpose greater than your pain. Your struggles do not define your identity. God does. Your failures are not the end. They are the soil in which your faith is being refined. Even in the fire, God is watching. Even in the storm, God is holding you. Even in silence, God is speaking. Sometimes the most dangerous attacks are the silent ones. The thoughts that seem so small, so quiet, yet they fester. Thoughts like, I'm not enough. I can't take this anymore. Why is my life like this? These whispers are not random. They are arrows. But you are not left unarmed. God has given you everything you need to silence the lies and stand in victory. He has given you the authority to command your atmosphere, the ability to shift the entire climate of your soul by calling on His name and resisting the darkness with faith. Do not underestimate the power of intention. What you focus on grows. If you constantly entertain the darkness, it will gain strength. But if you shift your attention to God, if you start your morning by declaring His goodness, if you fill your mind with His truth, if you train your spirit to recognize His presence, then you will begin to walk in divine clarity. The fog will lift, the confusion will vanish, the torment will break, and peace will become your home. You see, the enemy wants you to think you are powerless. He wants you to believe that these thoughts are just part of who you are. But the truth is, you are not your thoughts. You are not your past. You are not your fears. You are what God says you are. And when you truly believe that, something changes. Your posture changes. Your language changes. You stop begging and start declaring. You stop trembling and start standing. You stop hiding and stop fighting. Some of you have been waiting for someone to fight for you. But today I tell you that God is waiting for you to rise up and fight with Him. Not in your own might, but by surrendering fully to His will. God does not move in hesitation. He moves in surrender. He responds to desperation. When you say, God, I can't do this without you, the heavens move. The power of God is not limited. It is not confined to sacred places or holy men. It is available for you right now, right where you are. There are people listening right now who have cried in silence. You've said nothing to those around you, but the war in your mind is real. The heaviness, the confusion, the mental exhaustion, it's not imagined, it's spiritual. And God sees it. He sees every battle. He hears every silent scream. He knows every sleepless night. And He is not distant. He is not passive. He is right there with you. He is closer than the breath in your lungs. And He is ready to bring peace to the storm inside your head. You must decide to stop feeding the thoughts that are trying to destroy you. You must stop giving space to the voices that never came from God. You must cut the cord. You must close the doors. And you must fill those spaces with the divine truth that comes from God alone. Because once the truth enters, the lies have no place to hide. They scatter like shadows at sunrise. The light of God reveals, heals, and restores. Let me speak clearly. You cannot have peace if your mind is constantly filled with noise. You cannot walk in purpose if your thoughts are chained to your past. You cannot hear God if you are tuned into the frequency of fear. You must choose what voice you will amplify. And I say to you, amplify the voice of God. Let it roar through your spirit. Let it echo through every chamber of your heart. Let it rise above the chaos until it becomes the dominant sound in your life. And here's what happens when God becomes the loudest voice. Your entire atmosphere changes. You walk differently. You think differently. You speak differently. People around you will sense it. They'll feel the peace radiating from you, not because you don't have battles, but because your mind is anchored in God. And an anchored mind is an unshakable mind. Some of you have been begging for peace when God is calling you to possess it. Peace is not given to the passive. It is seized by those who surrender to God and rise in authority. You must claim it. You must speak it. Say it even when you don't feel it. Say it until your soul believes it. My peace does not come from this world. It comes from God, and no demon can take it from me. You were not made to live with constant torment. You were not designed to carry the weight of every lie. God created you for freedom, for clarity, for stillness of spirit, for wholeness, for soundness of mind. And no demon has the right to steal what God has given, but you must protect it. You must guard it like a treasure. You must treat your peace like gold too, precious to be traded for anything. This is spiritual war, and the battleground is not out there. It's in here, in the silence, in the unseen corners of your thoughts. But take heart, because God has already equipped you. He has already spoken. He has already sent His power. You just have to activate it by choosing Him, by seeking Him, by filling your day with His presence. Or not just through your prayers, but through your lifestyle, your choices, your focus, and your attention. You must train your mind to come into agreement with God, not with fear. Agreement is powerful. What you agree with, you empower. So stop agreeing with your worries. Stop agreeing with hopelessness. Stop agreeing with voices that were never from God. Break the agreement, renounce it, and declare only God has the authority to define me. Only God has the right to shape my future. Only God has the final say over my mind. This is not just motivational language. This is divine truth. If you take it seriously, it will transform you. It will renew your mind. It will rebuild your strength. And it will silence every demonic spirit that thought it had control over you. You are not weak. You are not broken beyond healing. You are not lost. You are not forgotten. You are called by God. You are guarded by God. You're surrounded by His presence. And you are being lifted right now into a new level of clarity, strength, and purpose. Let the lies fall. Let the fear crumble. Let the torment end. And now, beloved soul, listen with the ears of your spirit. This truth is not meant to tickle the ear, but to shake the very foundations of your bondage. There is no bondage that begins outside of you. It all begins in the unseen battlefield of the mind. It is there that thoughts take root, and it is there that demonic spirits launch their fiercest attacks. But you must understand this. Those thoughts are not just thoughts, they are the bait of spiritual warfare. The moment you begin to entertain them without questioning their source, they start building invisible walls around your destiny. But you are not created to be imprisoned in your own mind. You were created to walk in the freedom that comes only when your thoughts are aligned with the eternal voice of God. Let me say something many are afraid to say. There are spiritual forces that study your weaknesses. They watch where you flinch. They observe what you fear. They note the trauma you've buried deep beneath your smile. They don't come through the front door. They come through the cracks, that one memory you haven't healed from, that one insecurity you keep silent, that guilt you carry in private. These are the entry points the enemy looks for. And once inside, he plants thoughts that seem harmless at first, just a suggestion, just a passing fear. But those thoughts are designed to multiply. They are meant to confuse your discernment and choke your connection with God. But hear this loud and clear. You are not without defense. God has not left you vulnerable. When he formed you, he gave you more than flesh. He gave you a spirit, a divine connection to himself that can never be severed unless you choose to walk away. That means even in the middle of your darkest night, even when the torment is screaming louder than your strength, you can cry out to God and he will answer. Not later, not tomorrow, not when you think you're finally worthy, but now. Because God doesn't need your perfection. He needs your surrender. He needs your cry. He needs your faith to reach out, even if it's trembling. This is not a time for half measures. This is not the hour to tiptoe around your spiritual health. You must take full authority over your atmosphere. You must cleanse your inner temple with the fire of God's presence. That means cutting off anything that contaminates your clarity. That means protecting what you watch, what you listen to, what you read, and who you allow to speak into your life. Make no mistake, demonic spirits are coming. They will use voices that sound familiar, messages that sound innocent, and thoughts that feel like your own to enter your life. But when you are full of the truth of God, their counterfeit message will be exposed. You must learn to discern. Discernment is the spiritual radar that alerts your soul when something is not from God. It's that unease in your spirit when someone says the right words but carries the wrong energy. It's that voice inside that says, turn this off, walk away, don't agree with that. That's not paranoia. That's protection. That's God shielding you from the thoughts that seek to undo the work he's doing in you. Honor that discernment. Train it. Sharpen it. Because it will become your sword against the unseen. And once you identify the source of a tormenting thought, don't entertain it. Evict it. Speak to it as if it were a trespasser, because it is. Say with boldness, this thought has no right to live in my mind. My mind belongs to God. My peace belongs to God. My destiny belongs to God. I do not receive this fear. I do not agree with this confusion. I reject this doubt. I command it to leave, and I invite the presence of God to fill every space where darkness tried to dwell. Sin. Some of you are living with thoughts that were planted in childhood. Words spoken over you by parents, teachers, or people you trusted. Words that took root and have been growing thorns ever since. Words like, you're not enough. You'll never change. You're just like your failure. You're too broken to be loved. These are not your truths. These are not God's words. And if they are not from God, they have no right to occupy your mind. You must uproot them like weeds from a garden, and you must replace them with divine truth. You are called. You are loved. You are being refined. You are covered by the mercy and protection of God. When you begin to fill your thoughts with God's word, something supernatural begins to happen. The fog begins to lift, the heaviness begins to break, and a new awareness takes hold, a clarity that no medication can give, a calm that no therapy can replicate. Not because those things aren't useful, but because what you need first and foremost is spiritual alignment. Return to the voice that created you, a return to the source of all peace. A return to the one who knew you before the foundation of the world. Do you understand that the mind is not a passive container? It is an active battlefield. And what wins in that battlefield determines how you live. If you allow fear to win, you live afraid. If you allow shame to win, you live in hiding. If you allow lies to win, you live in confusion. But if you allow God to win, if you crown his voice as final, then you live in power, peace, and purpose. This is the victory that comes not from striving but from surrender. There are spirits assigned to your discouragement, spirits that feed off your doubt, spirits that celebrate every time you give up. But there is also God watching, waiting, standing by with power, ready to flood your mind with light the moment you call on him with conviction. God is not a distant observer. He is your refuge, your strength, your fortress. He is the voice that doesn't just comfort you. He commands peace. He declares order. He rebukes chaos. And when he speaks, every demonic voice is silenced. I tell you now, do not wait for someone else to come and rescue your mind. Do not wait for life to become easier or for circumstances to improve. God is ready to meet you in your current state. Not when you've got it all together, not when you feel strong. Right now, in your brokenness, in your fear, in your overwhelmed silence, that is where God works best, in the moments you feel the weakest. Because it is then that His strength can be made perfect in you. So call on Him with all you have, with your whole soul. Cry out and let your voice rise above the noise of doubt. And when you do, God will not delay. The moment you say enough and turn your thoughts fully to Him, He will move. He will realign your mind. He will burn away every lie. He will uproot every stronghold. And He will place in you a spirit of boldness, clarity, and unshakable calm. Let this be the turning point. Let this be the moment you refuse to be ruled by invisible chains. The moment you stop surviving and start living, not as a victim of your thoughts but as a victor under the shadow of God's protection. Let every word spoken today take root and let it bear fruit in your mind, in your life, and in your destiny. Because when your mind is surrendered to God, you become unstoppable. No demonic spirit can touch you. No lie can live in you, and no darkness can dwell where God's light has been invited into reign. And now let the weight of this message settle deep in your spirit. This is not just another speech. This is a call to awaken your soul to the full reality of spiritual warfare. Every thought you think carries power. Every thought either aligns you with God or pushes you closer to the influence of unseen forces working against your peace. This is why the battle for your mind is the most dangerous and the most sacred of all, because if the enemy can invade your thoughts, he doesn't need change. He controls you from within. But when your thoughts are governed by the truth of God, no force in the heavens or on earth can move you from your place of peace and purpose. Do not underestimate the role of silence in spiritual attack. Many demonic spirits operate best in silence when you refuse to speak against them. When you internalize the fear, when you nurse the pain instead of casting it out. But I say to you now with holy urgency, open your mouth and fight back. Declare war on the lies. Let your voice become the sword that pierces the darkness. Let your cry to God be your alarm, your trumpet, your weapon. Because the enemy may attack your mind, but he cannot survive in an atmosphere filled with God's truth. Some of you have been asking, why won't the voices stop? But the question should be, what truth have I not yet released into my mind? God is truth, and wherever truth is absent, lies take root. So feed your mind with truth until there is no room for deception to breathe. Wake up with it. Walk with it. Speak it to yourself when no one is around. When the world is shouting its noise and the enemy is whispering its venom, let God's truth be your anthem. And don't just think the truth, live it. There are people who know what God says, but they still live as if the lies were stronger. That is not faith. That is fear in disguise. Faith is not just agreeing with God in theory. Faith is aligning your daily actions, your reactions, your emotions with what God has declared. Even when your feelings scream otherwise, even when everything in your life looks like chaos, even when the thoughts try to rise again, faith is standing in the middle of a storm and saying, my mind belongs to God. I will not bow to fear. I will not obey confusion. I will not be moved by doubt. I am anchored in the power of God. And hear me, that kind of faith is dangerous to the enemy. It disrupts his agenda. It demolishes strongholds. It unseats every demonic influence that has tried to set up camp in your thinking. Because when you live as though God's word is final, you strip the enemy of his weapon agreement. He cannot stay where he is not welcome. He cannot rule what he does not own. So take back the territory of your thoughts. Reclaim the land of your inner world. You don't belong to darkness. You don't belong to worry. You don't belong to fear. You belong to God, and your mind must reflect that truth. Let me speak now to the one who has grown weary in the battle. You've prayed, you've fought, you've done everything you know how, yet the torment still comes in waves. Let me tell you, the battle intensifies before the breakthrough. Do not confuse pressure with abandonment. Do not mistake struggle for defeat. God is still working. God is still near. And what you feel now is not the end. It's the shaking before the release. It's the stretching of your faith muscles. It's the testing of your endurance. But if you do not give up, if you keep standing, if you keep declaring what is true, that resistance will break and God will flood your mind with clarity that the enemy cannot counterfeit. Do not wait for the emotion to match the truth. Sometimes the truth of God must be declared in defiance of your feeling. You may feel scared, but declare peace. You may feel weak, but declare strength. You may feel unworthy, but declare that God is with you. You may feel broken, but declare that God still has a plan, because truth is not based on emotion. Truth is based on God's eternal word, and it does not change. Speak it until it becomes your new reality. And don't walk this journey with a double mind. A double-minded soul is unstable in all their ways. You cannot declare truth one moment and speak fear the next. You cannot cry out to God and then run back to worry. You cannot worship one day and then dwell in darkness the next. There must be consistency in your confession. There must be a firm decision. I choose God over every lie, every feeling, every distraction, every voice. This decision must be made daily, and when it is, it builds spiritual momentum. The mind begins to shift. The atmosphere begins to change. And the voice of God becomes so loud in your soul that the enemy can no longer compete. I'm telling you, this is not fiction. This is not emotional hype. This is real. There is a spiritual realm more real than what you see with your eyes. And your mind is the gateway. You must guard it with everything you have. Be ruthless in your resistance to negative thinking. Be intentional about what you allow into your spirit. Be committed to filtering every thought through the lens of God's will. And remember this, not every thought is an attack. Some are tests. Some are mirrors revealing where your faith needs to grow. Some are wake-up calls alerting you to the doors you've left open. Use discernment. Do not assume every mental struggle is defeat. Sometimes it's divine training. God is forging your mind into a vessel that can carry His power without breaking. He is stretching your capacity. He is sharpening your perception. He is teaching you how to fight in the Spirit, not just for yourself, but for those who will follow your example. Because once your mind is free, you become a threat. You become the one who breaks generational patterns. The one who speaks light into dark rooms. The one who doesn't just talk about God's power but demonstrates it. You become the walking evidence that God is greater than any thought, any attack, any enemy, any voice. So don't you dare give up. Don't you dare retreat. Don't you dare agree with darkness for one more moment. You have everything you need to be victorious. Not because of your strength, but because of your surrender. Not because of your control, but because of your trust. Let the power of God wash over your mind like a flood. Let Him cleanse the hidden places. Let Him rebuild the broken walls. Let him set your thoughts in divine order. And once your mind is aligned with God, your whole life will follow. Your decisions will change. Your reactions will change. Your relationships will change. Your peace will no longer come and go. It will dwell. And no matter what storms rage around you, the storm inside will be still. Because when God rules the mind, there is no room for torment. There's only peace, and not just any peace. The peace that only God can give. And now let every soul under the sound of this truth be shaken free from slumber. Because this war, this silent, invisible, creeping war, is not fiction. It is not exaggeration. It is the very conflict that decides whether your life will be led by truth or by torment, by clarity or by confusion, by divine peace or by relentless chaos. And the center of this war is your mind. The enemy knows something many people do not realize. If he can seize your thoughts, he can delay your destiny. He doesn't need to take your body, your possessions, or even your reputation. If he can take your thoughts, he has already stolen your future. But here is what the enemy fears the most. Not your talent, not your success, not even your religious practices. What he fears is a person whose mind is fully surrendered to God. Because when the mind is ruled by God, it becomes a place of divine strategy, a place of spiritual strength, a place where no demonic seed can take root. A mind governed by God becomes a fortress unshakable, untouchable, and unstoppable. You see, the real strongholds are not in the heavens or in the dark corners of this world. The real strongholds are in the mind, fortresses built from years of believing lies, agreeing with fear, and giving space to voices that contradict the truth of God. But today, God is calling you to tear those strongholds down, not with violence, but with conviction. Not with your emotions, but with truth. Truth is your spiritual hammer. And every time you declare it, you are breaking down another wall, another chain, another false identity that has tried to define you. Let me speak directly to those who have been bound by fear, crippling, paralyzing fear that robs your peace in the morning and steals your sleep at night. That fear is not from God. That fear is not your portion. That fear is not your master. It is a spirit, and it can be resisted. But you cannot fight a spiritual enemy with natural means. You must confront fear with truth. Speak to it. Don't whisper, declare, say, I will not fear, for God is with me. My thoughts are under the watch of God, and nothing shall overcome me unless I allow it. And some of you have allowed the enemy to stay too long. You've let those toxic thoughts linger because they become familiar. You've called them your personality. You've accepted them as your nature. But hear me, you were not born to carry what God never gave you. The thoughts that make you feel small, unworthy, defeated, or forgotten, those are not a part of your identity. They are trespasses, and you have the right, no, the responsibility to cast them out. God did not design the human mind to host darkness. The human mind was created to host clarity, purpose, vision, and divine order. That is why when your thoughts are in disorder, your entire life feels misaligned. You may try to fix the external, change your habits, alter your surroundings, but if you do not fix the internal, if you do not surrender the hidden places of your mind to God, you will always return to the same pain under a different disguise. Demonic spirits are masters of disguise. They won't always come with horns and threats. They come as self-doubt, as overthinking, as comparison, as procrastination, as emotional fatigue. They come wearing the mask of normally until you start believing this is just how life is. But friend, life was never meant to be lived in constant mental torment. Life is meant to be lived with a mind anchored in God's presence. So ask yourself, what thoughts have I allowed to stay? What mental patterns have I normalized that are actually spiritual? Bondage. Because before you can be free, you must want to be free. You must hate the lie enough to cast it out. You must love God's voice enough to make it the only one that matters. That is the moment the shift happens. That is the moment the shift happens. When you stop feeding your fear and start feeding your faith. And here is a mystery that many miss. Sometimes the presence of attack is not a sign of weakness, but of spiritual transition. The attack against your mind often intensifies when you are close to breakthrough, when you are nearing a place of greater clarity, deeper surrender, and higher spiritual awareness. So if you're feeling pressure, don't assume you're losing. You might be on the verge of divine advancement. The enemy senses when your spirit is being elevated, and he will use every thought, every lie, every distraction to keep you stuck where you are. But do not back down. Press through the pressure. Keep speaking truth. Keep declaring God's authority over your mind until the very walls of deception crumble. And I must speak to this too. Do not isolate yourself. Isolation is the enemy's favorite environment. When your thoughts are in torment, the worst thing you can do is suffer in silence. Find a space where truth is spoken. Find voices that remind you of who God says you are. Surround yourself with those who walk in wisdom, not confusion. Let your spiritual circle be filled with light so that no lie has room to hide. God is calling you not just to survive mental warfare, but to master it, to rule over your thoughts the way a king rules over his kingdom, with authority, with consistency, with diligence. You are the gatekeeper of your mind. You must decide what enters and what is cast out. And God will stand with you, fight beside you, and fill your mind with power if you remain faithful to his voice. Do not be discouraged if it doesn't happen in a day. Strongholds are not always broken in a moment, but they are broken with persistence, with obedience, with faith, with the daily decision to reject what is false and embrace what is eternal. Every time you resist the lie, you weaken its grip. Every time you speak the truth of God, you strengthen your spirit. Every day that you align your thoughts with divine wisdom, you are rebuilding your inner world brick by brick, thought by thought, until the dwelling place of your mind becomes a throne room for God's peace. So walk in that boldness, stand in that truth, let the fire conviction burn away every mental chain that has bound you. Let the voice of God be the loudest sound you hear. Let his presence govern your inner world like a holy flame. And when the enemy comes knocking again with old lies dressed in new language, you will have the strength to say, I know who I am. I know who governs my mind. I know the voice I belong to, and I will not be moved. Because when your thoughts are guarded by God, you are not just at peace. You become a beacon of peace for others. Your freedom becomes a testimony. Your clarity becomes a weapon against darkness. Your surrendered mind becomes a platform for God to speak, to move, to reign, not just in your life, but in the lives of all who cross your path. That is the power of a mind ruled by truth. That is the victory of a soul aligned with the one eternal God. My beloved friend, may I share with you a truth that might stir your spirit on, that could gently challenge the places you've kept hidden in your heart. There comes a sacred moment in every soul's journey when God, in His infinite wisdom, whispers, "Let them go." And when that whisper comes, do not delay. Not from anger, not from resentment, but from reverent obedience. Because something divine begins to move deeply, quietly, eternally, when you release what no longer belongs to the path God has prepared for you. What you release on earth, heaven takes notice of. And when you loosen your grasp on what God never intended you to keep, He releases from His hand what you've been longing for all along. Far too often, we cling to relationships not because they are meant for us, but because we fear the emptiness their absence might leave behind. We chase after approval. We seek comfort in companionship. We anchor our peace in people's actions and build our identity upon their opinions. But in the stillness, God speaks. They are not tied to your calling. And when that truth unfolds in your spirit, it isn't to harm you, it's to heal you. Because letting go isn't just about releasing a person, it's about making room for God to move, to dwell, and to lead. Make no mistake, letting go is a spiritual battle. When you choose to release someone God never intended you to carry, the enemy trembles because he thrives in the soul ties that bind you, in the relationships that exhaust your spirit. But when you break free from what was never blessed, you step into your God-given authority. You are no longer bound by emotional chains. You are no longer manipulated by guilt or held hostage by past ties. You no longer look to people for validation because you now walk in the truth of who God has already declared you to be. Letting go is not defeat. It is divine warfare. It is you rising up in holy surrender and declaring, "I choose God's will above my feelings. I choose destiny over comfort. I choose peace over confusion." As you walk away from what drains your spirit, you move closer to what God has ordained. And heaven rejoices when your soul aligns with the promise He has already spoken over your life. Understand that some people were never meant to walk the full journey with you. They were sent for a moment, a season, a lesson, a shaping. But not everyone is meant to remain. The misstep we often make is trying to make temporary assignments into lifelong fixtures. When God begins to shift things, He isn't asking for your ease. He's calling for your trust. And when He says, "Let go," know this: He has already prepared the next chapter. But you can't step into what's coming while clinging to what's past. Letting someone go isn't just an action, and it is a sacred release, a holy alignment with heaven's plan. You are making a declaration in the unseen realms that you trust God's wisdom above your own understanding, that your peace is not tethered to a person, but anchored in the very presence of God. And the moment you place that relationship into His hands, something begins to shift. A new spiritual season opens before you. The fog lifts. Your ears tune to the voice of God with fresh clarity. You begin to feel lighter, not because the pain vanishes, but because the burden you were never meant to carry has finally been released. There are soul ties that break when you let go, chains that no one can see begin to fall. Generational cycles, deep-rooted and long-standing, begin to end. All because you made one courageous decision. Because what you're wrestling with isn't always the person. It's the spirit behind the attachment. When God says, "Let them go," He's not being harsh. He's being protective. He's shielding you from a spiritual leech. Something that drains your strength, muddies your vision, and stalls your growth. But when you obey, shackles fall, and slowly, quietly, your spirit begins to breathe again. it begins to heal. Do you know how many destinies have been delayed by people who refuse to release what God already removed? They hold on to someone who's still physically near, but spiritually long gone. They smile in your presence, but their spirit disrupts your peace. That is not love. That is a war in the spirit, and God does not dwell in confusion. When He is in it, there is clarity. When He is in it, there is divine order. When He is in it, you will never be asked to sacrifice your sanity just to keep someone close. This is why God sometimes allows heartbreak, because brokenness gets our attention. Shattered places drive us to His arms, and even in the pain He is pruning. He is preparing, because before the blessing comes, He separates. Before the elevation, He isolates. Sometimes the greatest spiritual breakthrough doesn't come from holding on, but from letting go. And the longer you cling to what God has already asked you to release, the heavier your soul becomes. Drained, confused, anxious, restless. That's not punishment. It's the weight of disobedience. You are not formed to carry what He told you to set down. You are not chosen to remain entangled with what His Spirit has already left. If you want to walk in true freedom, you must release what does not belong in your next season. Let me ask you, what is it that you're afraid of losing? Is it the fear of being alone, of being rejected, of feeling empty? God knows, but do you believe or really believe that the same God who breathed life into you can also fill the space that feels hollow now? Do you trust that the God who knows the end from the beginning has already written a new beginning for you? Because, friend, you are not letting go into emptiness. You are letting go into the arms of a faithful, ever-present. When you let go, you silence the lies. The lie that says you need them to feel joy. The lie that whispers you won't make it without them. The lie that insists your worth is determined by how someone else treats you. No, beloved. Your worth has always been defined by the one who formed you. And when you truly know who you are in Christ, you stop pleading for people to stay. You stop chasing after what has already departed. You stop apologizing for choosing peace, because now you realize it was never about who left. It's about who you're now walking toward. Letting go is not the ending. It's a divine beginning. The beginning of deep healing, the beginning of clear vision, the beginning of awakening your spirit to the move of God. And when you finally release what was not yours to carry, your eyes begin to open to what was hidden. You hear God's voice in a way you've never known before, because finally there's space. Space for His whispers, room for His presence to move. Do not be deceived by the enemy's voice trying to convince you that letting go means you failed. No, the greatest victory often comes in the surrender. The moment you release them, you reclaim your strength. You take back the peace that was stolen. You reposition your soul beneath the refuge of God's covering. But that's also when the real battle begins, not on the outside, but within. Because the enemy will try to pull you back into what you've left. He'll use nostalgia. He'll weaponize guilt. He'll stir up fear. But when your spirit is anchored in God's truth, none of his tactics will succeed. There is a spiritual breakthrough that comes with obedience. And when you step into that obedience, the heavens respond. Doors swing open. Weights lift. Barriers crumble. And peace begins to flow through you like a river of life. Blessings you never even asked for begin to find you. Favor you didn't earn begins to rest upon you. All because you made the difficult choice, the holy choice. And heaven always responds to obedience. Some of you are still praying for clarity. But the truth is, God already answered. He whispered in the quiet. He confirmed it through the conflict. He showed you with undeniable signs. Deep down, your spirit knows you're just waiting for it to feel easier. But obedience, dear soul, is rarely easy. It is costly. It demands faith. It requires surrender. There is a holy shift that takes place when you release them. Your nights become restful. Your days become lighter. Your thoughts gain clarity. Not because the world around you has changed, but because the war inside you has ended. You are no longer divided between divine truth and emotional desire. You are no longer caught between confusion and conviction. You are aligned. And when your soul is aligned with God, you become a threat to the darkness. Some of you have been circling in spiritual delay simply because you're still holding on to what God already told you to release. You've been praying for a breakthrough but still clinging to baggage God asked you to release. You've been standing still asking for forward movement but keeping one foot chained to the past. You cannot rise while carrying what was meant to be laid down. You cannot soar while clutching the weight of what God already called you to let go. God is calling you higher, but to ascend, you must release. And hear this clearly. It's not personal. It's deeply spiritual. Not every separation is a woundsome. Our divine protections, some of God's mercy wrapped in silence, because He sees what you can't. He knows what you don't, and what you may call rejection, God calls redirection. What feels like abandonment, He names as advancement. God is not punishing you. The ache of letting go is real, but it's fleeting, and what waits on the other side is not emptiness. It's eternal peace. If you trust Him enough to let go, He will honor that trust with restoration. Not always with the same people, but always with something deeper within your soul. He will restore your joy. He will restore your clarity. He will restore your sense of purpose. And most of all, He will restore your faith. When God starts pulling you away from someone, it is never random. It is not coincidence. It is divine intervention unfolding before your eyes. Something is shifting in the spiritual realm, even if your natural eyes can't yet perceive it. God is aligning your steps not for ease, but for eternal purpose. You may not understand it now. You may feel unsettled. You may sit in the stillness and wonder why it hurts. But listen, the void is often where God performs His most powerful work. In the absence of the familiar, God introduces the supernatural. In the silence that follows release, He plants new roots of discernment, wisdom, and spiritual depth. Transformation begins not when you hold on tighter, but when you finally release what was never meant for you. You stop searching for peace in people and start finding it in the person of Christ. You stop clinging to a love that wounds her and begin receiving the love that heals. When you surrender a relationship into God's hands, you are declaring, Lord, I trust that you know what I need better than I do. And that kind of surrender, radical and real, shakes the very foundation of fear. It silences the inner turmoil because now you are standing not on what fades but on what lasts. Some people delay your growth, not because they're evil, but because their spirit no longer aligns with where God is taking you. They speak confusion when you need clarity. They stir cycles that God has already broken, and even if your heart wants to hold on, your soul begins to resist. That resistance is not rebellion. In its revelation, it's the Holy Spirit stirring a holy unease. And God may not shout, but He speaks in restlessness. He speaks in the disquiet that won't leave until obedience arrives. That inattention is God's mercy in motion. His way of leading you out before what's hurting you begins to destroy you. Because sometimes letting someone go is not a reflection of their failure. It's a revelation of your growth. Letting go is not just about someone else. It is a declaration of how deeply you honor what God is doing in your life. It's acknowledging that your time, your spirit, and your divine calling are far too sacred to be spent on those who do not nourish what God has planted within you. You're not walking away in bitterness. You're stepping back in wisdom because you've come to realize a hard but holy truth. Not everyone is meant to walk with you into where God is leading. You weren't made for confusion. You weren't designed to live in emotional chains. You are created for clarity, for growth, for forward motion. And when someone becomes a weight instead of a wing, God in His mercy will create the space you are too afraid to make. Resist it and you prolong the ache, but submit to it, and you unlock peace. Every act of obedience is written in heaven. Every release, every surrender, every letting go is not forgotten. It is honored. And there is nothing you place on the altar of obedience that God won't return multiplied. You may weep in the midnight hour, but joy is coming, not in the form of another person, but from the God who never left. He fills the gaps left by others. He restores the pieces they broke. And when you give Him room, He does what no one else ever could. He heals the deepest places of your soul. Stop trying to resuscitate relationships God already buried. Stop calling sacred endings a mistake. Stop trying to sustain what heaven has already let. Letting go is not cruelty, it is spiritual maturity. It's standing firm and declaring, my peace matters, my purpose matters, my walk with God matters more than my comfort zone. And yes, some will misunderstand. Some will label your silence as arrogance, your boundaries as coldness. But what they're really reacting to is their own loss of access. Spiritual detachment is uncomfortable for those who fed on your weakness. But you owe no one an explanation. You owe no one a defense. God sees your heart, and when you obey, He defends your silence. He blesses your restraint. He raises you above the storms that tried to drag you back into chaos. Sometimes God doesn't remove people because they're harmful, but because they're not ready for where He's leading you. Your next level demands clarity, protection, and laser-sharp focus. And even well-meaning people can carry spirits that blur your assignment. They speak fear when you need faith. They distract when you need discipline. They comfort you when you're meant to be challenged. And because He loves you too much to let you fall short of your calling, He calls you to let them go. Letting go is not passive. It's an intentional, active act of obedience and alignment with heaven's plan for your life. Letting go is not just a choice. It's a spiritual battle. It is warfare. It is pruning. It is trust set into motion. And when you release with a pure heart, not out of pride, not out of resentment, but in full surrender, you unlock a divine flow of favor that no force on earth can interrupt. Suddenly you start attracting what is truly from God and repelling what is not. Your atmosphere changes. Your relationships realign. Your peace deepens. And your spiritual vision clears in ways you never thought possible. This is what happens when you let go in obedience. You remove the blockages in your spirit. You clear space for God to pour into you. And when He pours, it's never halfway. It is abundant. It overflows. Overflowing peace that surpasses understanding. Overflowing wisdom that cuts through confusion. Overflowing strength that empowers your voice. Overflowing authority that breaks every stronghold. And in that overflow, something profound happens. You begin to realize that what you were missing was never them. It was always God. Here's the sacred truth. No one leaves your life without God's knowledge. Every departure bears the fingerprints of divine design. Even when it hurts, even when betrayal stings, even when you're caught off guard, God is not ignorant of your pain, but He permits it because He is weaving a grander story. And in that story, new chapters cannot begin until old ones end. You must trust the author more than the characters. His pen writes purpose, even through pain.
This process isn't only about what you're losing, it's about who you're becoming. You become stronger, not in pride but in peace. You become wiser, not from books but from brokenness. You become rooted not in others' approval but in God's presence. You no longer chase validation. You listen for God's whisper. You no longer feel the need to explain. You walk in quiet, sacred confidence. You stop entertaining what drains you and begin living in divine clarity. And that's when God begins to elevate you, not with applause but with separation, not with noise but with purpose. God always separates before He sends. He always prunes before He promotes. And sometimes what He cuts away are the very people you thought would remain forever. But forever is not a human promise. It is God's alone. People may change, shift, leave, but God remains constant. And when He is your foundation, you're not shaken by departures. You're stabilized by truth. Your life is no longer built on emotion. It's anchored in revelation. And if your heart still aches, let it. Healing is not weakness. It is evidence that your soul is still alive and tender before God. So cry, but know your tears are watering your next
season. Be silent, but let that silence become your sacred place. Be still, but let that stillness be your classroom, your spiritual school. Because in that space, God will find you. He will speak again. He will restore your strength. And over, He will reassure you. You made the right choice. You are not empty. You are not broken. You are becoming. You are being refined. You are being refined. You are being refined. You lost in people are gaining in purpose. God will never call you to release something unless He's already prepared something greater, something more. Align with His purpose for your life. The blessing is not found in who left. The blessing is revealed in who remains. And the one who remains through every storm, every silence, every tear is God. Let this truth be rooted deep in your spirit. When God removes someone from your life, He is not depriving you. He is delivering you. He is lifting a weight that was never yours to carry. A spiritual heaviness you kept dragging along, hoping it would someday feel lighter. But God does not assign you to burdens that crush your spirit. When you release someone, you are setting your soul free from captivity. You are choosing alignment over attachment, surrender over struggle. And that surrender becomes a holy signal to the heavens. You are ready, ready for God to move, ready for Him to exceed what you ever thought was possible. There are moments when God will allow discomfort in relationships, not to hurt you, but to free you. What feels like unraveling is actually divine reordering. And when the breaking comes, don't resist it. Reverence it. That breaking is God's hand cutting away ties that was silently strangling your spiritual life. Sometimes He must break your heart just enough to restore your vision. Sometimes He must dismantle illusions so He can reveal truth. And that truth, though it cuts, liberates. It severs the decay, the delusion, the unhealthy dependency. It clears the way for your destiny. You were never created to find your identity in another person. You were never called to let someone's mood determine your joy or their opinion define your value. That is not the freedom Christ died to give. That is spiritual bondage. But when you let go, you declare with boldness, my peace, my purpose, my identity. They are rooted in God and God alone. And when that declaration becomes your reality, your entire posture changes. You walk in authority. You speak with clarity. You stop settling. You stop shrinking to make others feel comfortable. You stop begging for approval because now you've tasted the approval of God. Letting go is not a loss. It's a divine awakening. It's a revelation of how much space someone occupied your thoughts, your emotions, your future, even your prayers. But now that space has been cleared, and in that sacred clearing, God begins to speak louder. Your prayers begin to shift from God, change, then to God, change me. That is what growth looks like. That is spiritual evolution. That is maturity. You no longer plead for God to preserve what He's already decided to prune. Instead, you pray, Lord, give me the strength to walk away. Give me the wisdom to discern what is not from you. Give me the courage to close doors you've already shut. Same. Because when you release someone, you are not just walking away, you are coming home. Home to peace, home to purpose, home to the presence of God. You are returning to yourself, returning to peace, returning to God. It is not just a step forward, it is a sacred return, a spiritual homecoming. And in that holy place, God meets you not with shame, not with judgment, but with comfort and compassion. He does not remind you of how long you held on. He celebrates that you finally surrendered. And from that moment on, He begins the rebuilding quietly, patiently, powerfully. He restores the parts of your identity that were hidden beneath someone else's shadow. He resurrects the dreams you silenced to make others comfortable. He breathes life back into the purpose you almost forgot. Never underestimate what God will do once you made space for Him. When you let go, you are not retreating, you are advancing. The barriers that once blocked your path lose their grip. The distractions that once filled your mind fall silent. The drains on your spirit lose their hold. You are free, and in that freedom God pours. He pours wisdom, He pours courage, He pours healing. And suddenly you see if small your world had become under the weight of the wrong attachment. Letting go is not just release, it's purification. It's a soul deep detox. You'll feel it in your sleep. You'll feel it in your speech. You'll feel it in your stillness. Everything becomes clearer. Not because your circumstances change, but because your spirit is no longer in battle with something God never meant for you to keep. The confusion quiets, the anxiety lifts, the pressure fades, and what remains is stillness. Stillness only God can create. And in that stillness you come to a holy revelation. Letting go was never really about them. It was about you, about your growth, about your readiness, about your willingness to step into spiritual maturity. It wasn't about what you lost. It was about who God was calling you to become. Because when God calls you higher, He also calls you cleaner. He cannot build your next chapter on a foundation cluttered with confusion. So He removes, He purifies, He aligns. And it all begins with your yes, your surrender. There are seasons when silence is your sanctuary. God quiets every other voice so that His voice becomes unmistakable. Not to isolate you in punishment, but to insulate you in preparation. Because what's next requires undivided focus. It demands clarity. It demands courage. It demands conviction. And you cannot carry emotional baggage into a place of spiritual authority. So God allows the separation not to break you, but to empty you, to make space for something more divine. Letting go activates your spiritual vision. You begin to discern what you couldn't before. You recognize when energy doesn't match your calling. You feel the weight of conversations that no longer edify. Because now you are no longer living from your emotions. You are living from your discernment. You are living from discernment. Now that's the transformation that happens when you walk away in alignment with God's voice. Your spiritual senses grow sharper. You are no longer reactive. You are responsive. You are no longer tethered to what happened. You are anchored in what God is doing right now. There will be people you release who won't understand. That's okay. That's not your burden to carry. Let them assume. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand your silence. You were never called to be understood by those God removed. You were called to walk in obedience. And the more you try to explain yourself, the more room you give for confusion to re-enter. You owe no one an explanation for a divine decision. What you owe God is your full attention. Because when you stay focused on Him, He fights battles you never even knew were being waged on your behalf. Letting go also uncovers hidden idols, the ones we didn't even realize we built. Sometimes we put people on pedestals they were never meant to stand on. We let their opinions outweigh God's direction. And when they leave, it's not just grief. We feel it's disorientation. Not because we lost them, but because we misplaced our identity in them. But here's the grace. God will dismantle every false altar in your life. He will tear down what you built in your pain to restore what He designed in His purpose. And in that sacred work, He brings you back to Himself, your true anchor, your true identity, your true peace. What comes after the release won't be a replica of what you lost. God doesn't recycle the past to comfort you. He aligns you with connections that reflect your growth, not your wounds. He prepares people who speak into your future, not your fears. So stop searching for what feels familiar. Start looking for what bears divine fruit. Look for alignment, not nostalgia. Look for conversations that challenge your spirit, not ones that lull you back into complacency. Seek presence that clarifies, not presence that confuses. And if you're still healing, remember this. God is not rushing your process. He will let the silence do its work. He will let the solitude mold you. 'Cause when your season arrives, you won't just be available. You'll be ready. Ready, not desperate. Whole, not broken. Yes, you'll cry. Yes, you'll miss them. Yes, old memories will echo. But your tears are not a sign of weakness. They are evidence of release. Each tear is watering the soil of your next season. Each quiet night is building a deeper foundation of spiritual strength. And each time you choose obedience over comfort, you are becoming who God destined you to be. This is the sacred power of letting go. It's not the end of love. It's the beginning of liberation. It's the moment you choose to protect your peace, honor your purpose, and give God your full allegiance. It's not failure. It's faith. Because you are no longer begging for broken pieces. You're standing in position for overflow. And in that overflow, you won't find people who complete you. You'll find people who match your completeness in God. You will no longer chase what was missing. You will begin to draw in what is divinely aligned. That is the reward of obedience. That is the promise waiting after the pain. And this is what happens in the Spirit when you truly let go. There is a depth to God's wisdom that we simply cannot reach while we're clinging to what feels familiar. Letting someone go isn't just an act of walking away. It's a step towards something infinitely greater, something beyond what your present mind can fully understand. It's trusting that God sees the path ahead with a clarity and purpose far beyond your own. When you release what doesn't align with your divine assignment, you're stepping into a sacred exchange. You're trading emotional instability for spiritual insight. You're surrendering chaos for kingdom clarity. And in that surrender, your soul cries out, God, I trust you more than I trust my own emotions. Here's the truth. Holding on to the wrong person isn't just emotionally exhausting. It's spiritually distracting. Every second spent tied to what pulls you out of alignment is a moment miswalking in the fullness of what God has ordained for you. And understand this. God will not compete with the attachments you refuse to surrender. If you long to go deeper in your purpose, clearer in your hearing, and stronger in your spirit, you must be willing to release what clouds your soul. Letting go is not abandonment, is purification. It centers your spirit. And God always meets you in that center with peace, with vision, with unwavering conviction. Some people were never meant to walk with you forever. They were sent to awaken what still needed healing inside you. They were mirrors showing you your own insecurity, your silent hunger for validation, your hidden reluctance to surrender fully to God. So when they walk away, it's not rejection, it's revelation. And what you uncover in that revelation becomes the sharpening stone for your spiritual growth. 'Cause God doesn't always teach us through gentle blessings. Sometimes He teaches through the breaking. And hear me clearly, God will allow your heart to break if it means saving your soul. Because not every relationship is divine. Some are spiritual distractions disguised as companionship. They may appear safe, even beautiful, but behind the surface, they rob you of focus. They fill space that God designed for peace, and being too close made it impossible to see the slow erosion of your spirit. But the love of God is too fierce to let you stay blind. He disrupts your comfort. He exposes the cracks. He removes the false security, not to wound you, but to ready you. When God separates you from someone, it's often because He's realigning your spirit. He's calling you back to clarity, back to discipline, back to the stillness, where His voice is no longer drowned by the noise. Because the farther you drift from His presence, the louder the world becomes. As the noise of the world grows louder, your spirit can feel more tangled and confused. No, this confusion is no accident. It is the consequence of disobedience. The moment you decide to let go, you turn down the volume of the world and tune into the clear, unwavering voice of God. You align yourself with the frequency of truth. There is nothing more perilous than being out of sync with God while clinging emotionally to someone who is not aligned with His will. Such attachment becomes a fortress, a stronghold in your spirit. But strongholds are meant to be torn down, not with bitterness or anger, but with faithful obedience. You must declare, God, even when it hurts, even when I don't understand, I choose your will. That declaration is your liberation. It breaks cycles. It silences the lies that convince you need someone more than you need God. Letting go does not mean you stop loving. It means you begin to love rightly. You love God above all else. You love yourself enough to protect your soul. You love your calling enough to defend your peace. And when you embrace this shift, your whole life starts to change. Your habits shift. Your conversations become different. Your boundaries grow firm because you are no longer living for approval. You are living for alignment. To those who feel stuck in indecision, hear this clearly. The longer you delay obedience, the heavier your spirit becomes. The signs are all around you. The unrest, the repetitive conflicts, the mismatch in values. This is not a passing phase. This is God's voice telling you what once served you is now holding you back. No amount of prayer can make right. What God has already shown you is wrong. You cannot pray peace into a relationship that God is calling you to release. Do not underestimate the blessings found in letting go. You gain spiritual clarity. You gain strength that does not depend on anyone else's presence. You build a relationship with God that no one can interfere with. And most importantly, you reclaim yourself, the healed, whole, focused version, anchored deeply in divine truth. You are not made to live in confusion. You are not designed to be manipulated, diminished, or drained. You are called to rise to walk in strength, and to move forward with purpose, and anything that hinders that must be surrendered. There will always be a voice questioning you. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm letting go too soon? But remember, God does not lead through torment. He leads in peace. When you release what is wrong, peace floods your spirit. That is your confirmation. Peace is not the absence of pain. It is the presence of obedience. And when you live in obedience, you walk in authority. Authority over your emotions, authority over your surroundings. You hold authority over every voice that once made you doubt yourself. Do not fear the silence that follows obedience. In that quiet space, God will speak louder than ever before. You will meet him in the stillness. You will find him in the calm. And what you feared losing in that release, God will replace with something deeper, richer, and eternal. He never removes without replacing. He never takes without giving more. Not always in the way you expect, but always in a way far better. You must believe that what God has planned ahead is worth the discomfort of leaving behind what he's calling you to release. You must trust that peace is waiting on the other side of pain. And you must believe that when God asks you to let someone go, it's because he's making room for something sacred, something that won't confuse you, something that won't drain your spirit, something that will walk with you, not pull you away from who you were created to be. Letting go isn't giving up, it's giving in. Giving in to the whispers God has spoken to your soul in moments of clarity. Giving in to the truth you already know. Giving in to the calling you've delayed for too long. And when you give in, you don't fall apart. You rise up. You rise with fresh strength. You rise with renewed vision. You rise with a spirit no longer bound by fear. You are not too late. You are not too broken. You are not beyond repair. God is still with you. His presence hasn't left you. His purpose for your life remains steadfast. If you trust him, if you follow his leading, if you let go of what isn't meant for you, you will enter a season of divine realignment, a season where every step is directed. Every door opens with purpose. Every relationship reflects your obedience. There is holiness in surrender. Not surrender to weakness, but surrender to wisdom. When God leads you to let go, you are not falling. You are being set apart. You are being consecrated because the journey God calls you to walk requires clean hands and a pure heart. A spirit free from confusion, compromise, and emotional turmoil. God cannot pour into a vessel already filled with what he never placed there. So he calls you to empty yourself, to release, to trust, to obey. Letting go is not the end of connection. It's the beginning of sanctification. It's the moment you stop asking people to do for your soul what only God can do. It's the moment your loyalty shifts from people to purpose, from feelings to truth, from dependency to divine alignment. And though this shift may be invisible to the world, it is felt deeply in the heavens. When you release what God never ordained, you are declaring your allegiance to the unseen mighty hand that orchestrates your life. Some people were never meant to journey with you. They were sent to awaken something within your soul. And once their purpose is fulfilled, God begins to shake the foundation of that connection, not to harm you, but to reveal truth, to strip away what no longer nourishes your spirit. If you listen closely, you will hear that inner warning. the restless unease, that quiet knowing. It is God's voice, and not in thunder but in clarity, not in pressure but in peace. And when you finally listen and obey, the atmosphere shifts around you. There is power in release. Power that breaks cycles. Power that shatters spiritual stagnation. Power that restores your identity. Because when you let go, you reclaim what you had surrendered. Your voice, your joy, your clarity, your discernment. You stop second-guessing yourself just to keep peace with those sent to test you, not bless you. You refuse to lower your standards, to hold on to someone who does not honor them. You rise, and that rising shakes the foundations built on compromise. Walking away from a connection that was never breathed into by God is not loss. It is spiritual promotion. You are being elevated not through applause or visibility, but in authority. Your energy is no longer scattered, your vision no longer clouded, your time no longer stolen. You are fully present with God. There is no room for confusion, no place for manipulation, no tolerance for disorder, because now you know what true peace feels like. And once you know peace, you refuse to settle for chaos. Letting go might feel like severing a part of yourself, but in reality, it is pruning. And any gardener knows pruning comes before growth. God does not remove for emptiness. He prunes to multiply. He removes to protect. He redirects to prosper. The people he asks you to release are not punishment. They are preparation. They taught you. They reveal something. But they cannot carry the weight of what is coming. Here is the deeper truth. If you refuse to release what God has told you to let go of, it will begin to rot inside you. It will infect your faith. You will pray with doubt. You will worship distractedly. You will move forward limping. God will not bless what he has asked you to leave behind. The anointing flows where there is alignment, and alignment comes through obedience. God does not desire partial surrender. He is not interested in halfway obedience. He calls you to let go completely. And finally, not with one hand still clinging, not with a bargaining heart, but with open hands and an open heart, because the blessings ahead require space to flourish. God will never force his gifts into hands that refuse to be emptied. Do not let guilt chain you to someone who was never meant to travel your path. Do not let nostalgia blind you to the warning signs of today. The memories may be sweet, but the fruit they bear is bitter. And God speaks clearly through fruit. What is the fruit of that relationship? Does it bring you peace or stir panic? Does it draw you closer to your purpose or pull you away from it? God is not the author of confusion, and anything that continually pulls you away from his voice is not his will. When you finally obey them with trembling hands and a tender heart, God begins to move. Suddenly the silence becomes sacred. Your mornings are filled with clarity. Your nights overflow with rest. Not because your circumstances have changed, but because you have changed. Your spirit is no longer imprisoned by false hope. Your heart is no longer entangled in confusion. And that freedom is the gateway to deeper wisdom, greater strength, and divine acceleration. Letting go sharpens your discernment. You begin to see what was once hidden, the manipulation, the double-mindedness, the inconsistencies. Everything comes into focus when your spirit is no longer clouded by emotional noise. The truth stands tall. God gives you eyes to see. And those eyes will no longer be deceived by charm, convenience, or familiarity. You now hunger for alignment over attachment, purpose over comfort, truth over sentiment. This shift is a hallmark of spiritual maturity. You will come to realize that what you mistook for love was actually distraction. What you thought was connection was control. What felt like stability was stagnation. And in that realization, your soul breathes for the first time in a long time. That breath is God's breath, returning to the places you silence to make space for someone who never recognized your full worth. If you're still wrestling with the grief of letting go, hear this. God does not overlook your pain. He gathers every tear. He sees every struggle, and he sees what you can. He sees the doors opening before you, the healing that's on its way, the new friendships, the purpose restored, the clarity about to unfold. You may not see it yet, but trust this. When God removes, he also rebuilds. He does not leave empty spaces. He fills them with himself. And when God fills you, you are never empty again. So walk away not with regret, but with reverence. Walk away not as a victim, but as a vessel being purified by God, a vessel being prepared, a vessel no longer willing to carry what was never part of his divine plan. Walk in strength, walk in truth, walk knowing this. Obedience today is the seed that will bring overflow tomorrow. And when you let go, it only will you be free. You will be fully, undeniably positioned for the next move of God. There comes a moment in every life when silence speaks louder than any response, when holding back is greater than lashing out, when the holiest action you can take is to walk away quietly, not with resentment in your soul, not with vengeance in your eyes, but with peaceful confidence that God is your defender, your protector, and your shield. This message today isn't rooted in anger. It's grounded in wisdom. It's not a matter of pride. It's about spiritual authority. Because there are battles you're not meant to fight. God already settled the outcome. You don't need to explain yourself to those who never had the heart to understand you. You don't need to keep nurturing connections that only deplete your spirit. The most powerful thing you can do right now is stop reacting and start releasing. Let them go, not with noise, but with divine calm. Sometimes the most thunderous statement is complete stillness. Sometimes your absence speaks volumes more than any words ever could. There are people who feed off your energy, who find satisfaction in seeing you lose your peace. But the moment you choose silence, you regain your spiritual footing. When you walk away, you recover your peace. And when you release them quietly, you make a bold declaration to the heavens and to your own soul. I trust God more than I trust my feelings. I refuse to let someone else's chaos disturb the sanctuary of my spirit. And God saw what they whispered behind closed doors. He knows the masks they wore, the kindness to your face, the betrayal behind your back. He heard the falsehoods, the manipulation, the ridicule. And while your heart may cry for justice, let your spirit cry for surrender. Because God doesn't require your reaction. He's asking for your obedience. Too often in defending yourself, you delay what God intended to do. When you try to make them feel the pain they caused you, you unintentionally stand in the way of divine justice. God doesn't need your help. He desires your surrender. There are people God gently nudged you to release long ago, but you clung to hope, didn't you? You thought maybe they'd change, maybe they'd realize your worth, maybe they'd finally apologize, maybe they'd love you rightly, and now here you are, weary, let down and left behind again. How many times will you return to what fractured you before you recognize that God is calling you out of that cycle? That's not love, it's captivity. That's not grace itself, abandonment. And God never created you to be someone's emotional trash bin or spiritual punching bag. Let them go, not in bitterness, but in healing, not with pride, but with the blessed assurance that God goes with you. Because some people were only meant for a season, not your full story. They were part of your shaping, not your future. And when their purpose in your life is past, you must be willing to release them in peace. You don't need to curse them. You don't need to expose them. Just remove yourself quietly and let God handle the rest. Let him deal with their heart, their conscience, their soul. You don't need to stain your hands trying to make things right. God is the righteous judge, the great equalizer, and he will repay in his time. Reaction is a trap set by the enemy. His goal is to lure you out of character, to stir your flesh, to push you into forfeiting the very peace God gave you. But when you resist the urge, when you remain still amid the storm, you send a declaration into the spirit realm. I am no longer led by my emotions. I am anchored in the authority of God. I will not let the enemy have the satisfaction of seeing me spiral. I will not entertain dysfunction. I will not bleed for the amusement of those who only came to watch me fall. I will guard my peace because my peace is not passive. It is power. There is strength in stillness. There is dignity and release. There is holy power in walking away without noise. Not because you lack love, but because you finally walk in clarity. You have come to understand your energy is sacred, your time is limited, your soul is valuable, and you will no longer cast your pearls before swine. You will no longer beg for crumbs in places where God has already called you royalty. If they cannot recognize your worth, it's not your assignment to convince them. God already chose you. God already set you apart. And when God's hand is upon you, no rejection, no betrayal, no dismissal can cancel your calling. Some people still have access to you only because you keep giving them the key. You keep answering their calls, responding to their drama, allowing your boundaries to bend until they break. But the time has come. Enough is enough. Draw the line. Teach your soul how to let go. Teach your heart that true love doesn't require constant pain. God never asked you to stay tied to toxicity. He never asked you to prove your loyalty to dysfunction. Some of you hesitate to cut people off because you don't want to be seen as unkind. But let me assure you, your healing is not an offense. Your growth is not a betrayal. Your boundaries are not cruelty. They are stewardship. Release them without a scene. Detach without an announcement. Let your silence carry the weight your words no longer need to bear. Because silence uncovers what noise tries to disguise. In stillness, the conscience awakens. In silence, the soul begins to feel. And what you could never articulate with 1,000 explanations. Some people will only recognize your value when your presence becomes memory. Some will only honor your faithfulness after they experience life without your constancy. So let God teach them what your love once gave them for free. Stop trying to fix what God is clearly ending. Stop resuscitating relationships that God already buried for your protection. Stop breathing life into situations that were meant to stay in the grave. When God shuts a door, He's not asking for your input. He's inviting you to rise higher. He's calling you out of the dark corners, out of the endless cycles, out of the sorrow that's been holding you down. Rejoice that you are finally free. You were never meant to be bound by someone else's brokenness. God desires to lift you, but elevation always comes with separation. You can't soar while dragging dead weight behind you. Some of you aren't restless because of stress, but because your spirit is wrestling with what your flesh keeps feeding. Deep down, you know the truth. They're not good for you. They drain you. They diminish you. They manipulate your kindness. And yet you hold on hoping for transformation while God is gently whispering, let them go. Stop confusing your calling. You're not their healer. You're not their savior. You are not their emotional rescue station. You are a vessel of divine purpose. And every moment spent trying to repair what was never yours to fix only delays your destiny. They'll talk. Let them. They'll call you changed. Accept it. They'll label you distant to embrace it. They'll say you're selfish. Ignore it because only you and God know what your peace cost. Only you and God know what you endured in silence. Only you and God truly understand what it took to finally choose wholeness over codependency. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It's sacred. It is stewardship. It is honoring the temple of your body and soul. It's protecting the life God has entrusted into your care, because you can't pour out if your well is dry. You can't lift others when you're buried beneath the weight of their issues. You must rise. And sometimes rising means releasing people who can't go where God is leading you. Some were placed in your past, not in your purpose. Some were part of the test, not the testimony. And if you keep dragging them into your destiny, they will only delay what God longs to do in you. Let them guard it with malice, but with maturity, not with bitterness, but with holy boundaries. God is making space for something greater, and as long as your hands cling to what's comfortable, you cannot receive what is divine. There is a time to speak and a time to remain still, a time to confront and a time to walk away, a time to fight and a time to surrender. The key is discernment, and discernment flows from intimacy with God. When your ears are attuned to His voice, you stop falling for the enemy's distractions. You no longer react out of wounds. You respond out of wisdom. You stop chasing closure because you realize God Himself is your closure. And when God ends a chapter, no human can reopen it. You owe no one access to your peace. You owe no one an explanation for the way you've chosen to heal. You owe no one the sacrifice of your sanity just to maintain an illusion of harmony. Some of you have poured too much, waited too long, suffered too deeply, and now it's time to release. Not in bitterness, not in vengeance, but in holy reverence for the God who is calling you out of what no longer honors Him. He is whispering to your weary soul, "Be still and know that I am your defender." You do not need to retaliate. You do not need to make your case. I will speak for you louder than any voice raised against you. There is healing in stepping back. There is restoration in letting go. And there is undeniable victory in silence. Let your growth answer their doubts. Let your peace be your boldest response. Let your distance declare your devotion to the will of God. Because when He sets you apart, no one can imprison your spirit. When He consecrates you for His purpose, He will remove whatever no longer serves His glory through you. So trust Him. Trust the distance. Trust the silence. Trust the release. It's not a punishment. It's a covering. Not cruelty. It's clarity. Not rejection. It's realignment with heaven's intention. Walk away, beloved, not because your heart is hardened, but because you finally learned how to love yourself in the light of God's truth. Not because you are arrogant, but because you've been made wise by the fire. Not because you are superior, but because you're now ready to rise, to bloom, to be whole. And as you rise, rise quietly. Let your silence carry the mystery of transformation. Let the heavens rejoice while the world wonders, for you are no longer a captive of chaos. You are now a keeper of peace, and your peace, your sacred God-breathed peace, is worth more than 1,000 explanations, 1,000 defenses, or even the apology that never came. Let them talk. Let them speculate. Let them distort the truth. It does not matter, because God knows, God saw, God heard, and God in his justice will act. You, on the other hand, just keep walking, keep climbing, keep choosing the stillness that secures your soul. For in the quiet, God is not absent. He is most active. In the stillness, he is orchestrating. And in your surrender, he is making all things new. Let them go, and let God take over. There are moments in life when the most powerful sermon you can preach is your silence. Not the silence of resentment, but the silence rooted in spiritual trust. Trust that God sees what man overlooks. He hears what man whispers in the dark, and he moves when your own strength is gone. You don't need to raise your voice to prove your worth. God proves it through your obedience. When you no longer react to every insult, betrayal, or scheme, you make a divine declaration. I do not serve chaos. I stand in peace, because God alone is my refuge. Let them misread your silence. Let them mislabel your peace. Let them see restraint and call it weakness. But you know God is guiding you away from what depletes, toward what builds. What feels like isolation is often God's preservation. He is drawing you back, not to punish, but to protect, to shelter you from environments and people that slowly poison your soul. It may look like you're losing relationships, but in truth, you are gaining divine clarity. Because when God subtracts from your life, it's not always loss. It's often multiplication in disguise. He is removing what hinders, so he can establish what's holy. God never called you to chase those who disregard your spirit. He did not fashion you to beg for connection where only confusion grows. The more you strive to be seen by people unwilling to honor you, the more you lose sight of the worth God already stamped upon your life. Stop explaining your heart to those committed to misunderstanding it. God isn't asking you to be understood. He's asking you to understand that your peace is sacred, not something to trade for temporary validation. You were never meant to burn yourself out to keep others warm. Your warmth, your light, your presence, it's holy ground. And when someone shows you they don't value it, believe them the first time. Often God uses silence to sharpen your vision. In that stillness, he unmasks the truth about those around you. Not every smile is sincere. Not every companion is meant to remain. Some were only spectators, never covenant partners. And when their role ends, their presence becomes resistance. So do not mourn their exit. Rejoice. God is making space for something greater. When you release what isn't of him, you unlock access to what is. But you must be willing to lose comfort for true peace. Willing to walk away from the familiar for the sake of divine growth. Willing to release people for the sake of obedience. A silent cutoff is not cruelty, it's clarity. It's your soul's declaration. I will no longer be held hostage by inconsistency. I will no longer entertain confusion in the name of loyalty. I will no longer excuse betrayal disguised as patience. Loyalty to God must always outweigh loyalty to people. If someone constantly disrupts your peace, diminishes your presence, and dismisses your worth, releasing them is not betrayal, it's obedience. God cannot bless what you won't let go of. He cannot elevate you while you cling to what keeps you beneath the weight of his promise. Do not fear. The silent sight is where God whispers most clearly. Without the noise, you'll discern his direction. Without destructive voices, you'll hear divine wisdom. Without the wrong people clouding your space, you'll uncover the right purpose. You are not called to fix every heart. You are not sent to rescue every soul. That is a cross too heavy for mortal shoulders. You are called to walk in alignment, even if that means walking alone for a season, even if it means being misjudged, even if it means being labeled distant. Because the path of obedience is rarely understood, but always rewarded. The opinions of man may echo loud for a moment, but only the voice of God endures for eternity. And when he says, cut them off, he speaks not from wrath, but from wisdom, not to injure you, but to initiate your healing. Some of you feel stuck. You wonder why your progress is slow, why your prayers seem unanswered, why your strength feels thin. Always in what you're doing. It's often in who you're still holding on to. You're carrying souls God never assigned to your journey. You're using bricks not meant for your foundation. You're entering battles that were never yours to fight. Let God step in. Let him be the revealer. Let him be the remover. Let him detach you from what your emotions still cling to. There is power in stepping back, power in letting God unveil the truth you are afraid to see. Your worth is not tied to how someone treats you. Their inability to honor you says more about their blindness than your value. If someone rejects you, it doesn't mean you're lacking. It may mean they're spiritually blind. If someone leaves, don't call it abandonment. It might just be divine intervention. God hears the whispers behind closed doors. He sees what's hidden in smiling eyes. He knows the intent behind every word, every silence. And when he removes someone, trust his judgment more than your attachment. Bless them in your heart, but let them go with your action. No curses, no curses, no curses, not halfway, but wholly. No more secret check-ins, no more leniency after repeated wounds, no more revisiting doors. God himself is sealed, and when you walk away, let it be final. Leave with resolve. Cut ties with peace, and not with drama, not with emotional debris, but with quiet dignity. Because this isn't just about walking away from someone. It's about walking toward God. And when you arrive in that sacred stillness, you'll discover that the peace you prayed for was never in their apology, was always in your obedience. You were never designed to survive in the chaos they brought. You were created to thrive in the peace God pours. And that peace begins with a bold, quiet decision. To stop investing in what drains you. To stop returning to what never filled you. To stop shrinking your worth to accommodate what refuses to rise. The one who chooses silence over reaction is not weak. They are wise. The one who walks away instead of retaliating is not passive. They are powerful because nothing rattles the enemy more than a soul that refuses to lose its peace. When you stop reacting, you stop fueling the fire. When you stop responding, you cut off the oxygen supply to the enemy's agenda. And when you disconnect in silence, you shift your gaze from the problem to the provider, from the distraction to the deliverer, from the chaos to the creator. So let your life speak without words. Let your quietness be your testimony. Let your composure become your resistance. Let your transformation be the loudest response. You don't need to retaliate. You just need to keep building your integrity, building your faith, building your purpose, and laying the foundation of your future. And while you build, let those who overlooked you witness your rise. Let those who misuse your kindness feel the emptiness your absence leaves behind, not out of spite, but because they must learn that God's chosen are not to be handled carelessly. You are God's investment. You are His instrument. You are His mission in motion. You carry too much divine purpose to be weighed down by those who can't see your spiritual value. You're too significant to be consumed by conflicts that lead nowhere. You are too anointed to be enslaved by the need for validation. It's time to move differently, to walk with quiet authority, to believe that divine silence carries more weight than the loudest debate. And when that moment comes, when they finally recognize your worth, they encounter not a heart hardened by offense, but a heart purified by God, fortified through silence, and anchored in peace. You don't need closure. You need clarity. You don't need their confession. You need God's confirmation. And He's already spoken. He's already revealed what needed to be seen. Now is the time to act. Cut ties with grace. Exit with strength. Never turn back. What lies ahead is more glorious than what's been left behind. What God is forming for your future will surpass anything anyone tried to destroy. What He's cultivating in you is far more significant than anyone you had to release. God sees your silence. He blesses your restraint. He will raise you up where others tried to bring you down. Trust His way even when it feels isolating. Trust the quiet even when others misunderstand it. Trust the parting even when it causes pain. Because in the hush, God is fortifying you. Hidden spaces, He's deepening your roots. And when He calls you forth, you won't come out bitter. You'll emerge better. You won't be fractured. You'll be whole. And you'll finally understand that the silence you embrace was never empty. It was holy. It was the echo of heaven calling you upward. There is something profoundly sacred about the one who learns to protect their peace, not from apathy, but from awareness. Awareness of their calling. Awareness of their time's value. Awareness of how the enemy often doesn't attack loudly but slowly through people who steal your joy, drain your energy, and distract your purpose without ever raising a weapon. And when God opens your eyes to the truth, it becomes impossible to keep living as you once did. You begin to recognize how much strength you wasted trying to explain, defend, and justify your presence to people who were never equipped to carry your spirit. But now you understand. And that understanding shifts everything. God never called you to be everything for everyone. He is not glorified by your burnout. He is not honored by your emptiness. He calls you to walk in wisdom, not weariness, to bear fruit, not frustration, and sometimes to step into that divine rhythm. You have to make sacred choices others won't comprehend. You must choose peace over approval. You must prioritize purpose over pleasing, and you must value stillness over storms designed to shake your soul. Because the one who remains calm amid chaos is not weak. They are covered. There is nothing more unsettling to someone who thrives on provocation than your refusal to react. When you no longer take the bait, when you stop flinching at offenses, when you close the doors to past disturbances, You reclaim your strength. You show the world that your peace does not come from man. It flows from God, that your stability isn't found in volume and stillness, that your courage doesn't rest in control, but in surrender. For only in true surrender do you learn how to walk away with grace, with dignity, with resolve. Quietly cutting ties isn't always about the other person. It's often about you. It's about honoring that gentle nudge within that whispers, "This is no longer your place." That sacred whisper, that divine tug, just God shifting your path, not out of revenge, but out of revelation where you're headed. Not everyone is meant to come. Where you're going, you'll need vision. You'll need resilience. You'll need a spirit untainted. And when someone keeps interrupting that, God will call you to let go. Not with fanfare, not with bitterness, but with quiet strength. A peace that says, "I still care, but I care more about God's plan for my life." When you stop reacting, you reclaim ownership of your emotional space. You begin to starve the dysfunction that once fed on your response. And in that withholding, something divine awakens. Your discernment deepens. You no longer confuse chaos for connection. You no longer misread inconsistency as care. You no longer equate volume with loyalty. Instead, you root yourself in truth. God becomes your guide. You start evaluating people not by their charm in moments of comfort, but by their posture in moments of quiet crisis and conviction. God isn't calling you to be harsh. He's calling you to be wise, to stop giving sacred things to hands that crush them, to stop defending boundaries to those who only plan to ignore them, to stop making room for what continually wounds your spirit. And when you finally arrive at that place when your heart no longer craves a reply, you are stepping into spiritual maturity. A maturity that no longer needs to win debates but seeks to grow. A maturity that doesn't strive to control every narrative, because it trusts that God already knows the whole truth. You cannot carry the oil of your calling in vessels that are cracked. And there are people no matter how generously you love, who will only leak your peace. You pour out kindness, yet nothing holds. That's not a flaw in you. That's not your assignment to fix. That's a divine signal revealing that only God can restore what is truly broken. Release them not in resentment, but in reverence, not out of anger, but out of alignment. Because remaining connected to what is broken beyond your repair only pollutes the purity of your purpose. God cannot fill what continually leaks. He is a God of divine order. And where there is chaos, He brings correction. Sometimes that correction isn't a loud rebuke. It's a soft separation, a quiet door closing, a gentle but final shift, a sacred withdrawal of access without explanation. Learn to perceive it. Don't grieve the ones God removes after you prayed for peace. Don't despair the disconnections after you beg for direction. His answers often come disguised in distance. You asked Him for discernment. He gave you space. You asked for strength. He gave you silence. And within that holy silence, He is crafting you for something higher. Let this truth rest deep in your soul. Peace is your sign. Peace is your green light. When God grants you peace about letting someone go, that peace is all the clarity you need. You don't need them to agree. You don't need a dialogue that wraps things up neatly. You don't need to plead your case. When the peace of God wraps around your heart like still waters over a storm, trust that peace, that sacred knowing, honor it. And don't second guess the release just because it stings. Some of the most transformational decisions will be made through tears. But tears don't mean you've erred. They mean it matters. They mean your spirit is shifting beneath the weight of your becoming. Let the tears come. Let the silence do its work. Let the old version of you fed so the new one can rise unashamed and full of purpose. God commands stillness for a reason. In the stillness, his whisper breaks through the noise. In the stillness, he restores what others tried to strip away. In the stillness, he refines your vision with heavenly clarity. If the enemy can't destroy you, he will seek to distract you. And often his most deceptive tools are not weapons, but people. Voices that sound comforting but lead you off course. Familiar faces that keep you in cycles. And the only way to break free is through silence. When you stop defending yourself, stop explaining, stop proving, healing begins, listening begins, clarity begins. You start to finally hear what God has been trying to tell you all along. So stop reopening doors that God has already sealed shut. Stop replaying conversations that only bring confusion. Stop letting people occupy sacred space in your heart while they continually poison your peace. You are not being harsh for setting boundaries. You are being holy for guarding what God has made sacred. And your peace is sacred. Your thoughts are sacred. Your environment is sacred. Your calling is sacred. Let your silence become a sanctuary. Let the separation become a consecration. You are not rejecting people. You are simply responding to God, and He is calling you higher. That upward call cannot be answered while you are tethered to distractions disguised as loyalty. Not everyone walking beside you is walking toward God's purpose. Some are there to stall your progress. Some are smiling to study you. Some stay close, not to uplift, but to keep you tangled in confusion. But God is never the author of confusion. He is the Prince of Peace. So when your spirit is stirred to move, obey immediately. Your peace is on the line. Your calling is at stake. Your destiny is waiting. Silence is not weakness. It is evidence of self-control. It reveals that you are no longer governed by your flesh, but led by the Spirit. And when you walk in the Spirit, you stop reacting to distractions. You stop lending your voice to drama. You stop defending yourself to those never meant to carry your purpose. Walk away and let your life bear witness. Let your integrity be the proof. Let your future echo the quiet strength of wisdom. You are not abandoning anyone by choosing inner peace. You are not betraying anyone by growing into God's design for you. You are not selfish for stepping into the sacred silence where God awaits. Let the noise dissolve. Let the distractions fall away. Let the meaningless conversations fade. There is a holy work happening within you. And that work cannot thrive in noise, in drama, in compromise. It must happen in silence, in solitude, in sacred separation. That is where warriors are forged. That is where God equips his vessels. That is where he raises up his chosen ones. And when the silence begins to feel suffocating, when the separation feels like isolation, remember this: God does his most powerful work in secret places. The seed breaks not in daylight, but in darkness. Roots deepen beneath the surface, far from applause, beyond the reach of human judgment. God is not distant in your stillness. He is deeply present. He is digging into your soul, breaking off what is strangled, your faith, trimming back what bears no fruit, and preparing you for a season of insight, purpose, and elevation. You are not being left behind. You are being transformed. And when you choose silence over reaction, you're not losing your voice. You're discovering your true authority. You're sending a message to the world that your emotions no longer dictate your choices, that your peace is not up for debate, and that your time is far too precious to waste on battles that bear no eternal weight. There is a divine wisdom that comes only from God, wisdom that guides you in knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. That wisdom becomes your defense. That silence becomes your covering. And when God surrounds you with peace, no slander, no whisper, no false story can shake your foundation. There will be those who simply cannot grasp your silence because they've never known the liberty that comes from truly letting go. They will confuse your peace with apathy, your boundaries with betrayal. But what they fail to see is this: your silence isn't about them, it's about obedience. It's about walking away from what poisons your soul, even if the world labels it as love. It's about honoring the soft whispers from heaven that say you've outgrown this space. You are not distant. You are discerning. You are not bitter. You are blooming. You are not escaping. You are elevating. God never called you to repair those who resist restoration. He never asked you to shoulder burdens He didn't place in your life. You are not meant to rescue everyone. That's not humility. It's hidden pride fueled by pain. Only God can transform hearts. Only God can open spiritual eyes. Only God can move a soul to repentance. You cannot force what only heaven can fix. So release that. Wait! You were never made to bleed just to keep others whole. You were formed to walk in truth. And truth, though healing, often divides. When you finally separate from what stunts your growth, be prepared. Discomfort will come. Your flesh will resist. Your thoughts will replay the good memories. Question your choices. Stir up guilt, but stand firm in the truth. Growth will often feel like grief. Elevation may resemble isolation. Refinement can ache before it heals. Trust the process. Trust the discomfort. Trust that what you are releasing can't compare to the peace God is preparing. For when God subtracts, He always replaces. When He clears, He also restores. When He removes, He also replenishes. God is not calling you to respond to every offense. He's calling you to rise above them. When confusion is sent your way, hold on to your clarity. When gossip circles around, hold fast to your grace. When your name is slandered, hold on to your silence. Because silence in God's hands becomes strategy. It speaks to the enemy. You no longer have access to my peace. You no longer toy with my thoughts. You no longer steal my rest. The one who is anchored in God knows this powerful truth. No word spoken against you can ever override what God has already spoken over you. There are conflicts too small for your calling. There are conversations unworthy of your time. There are arguments that cause too much peace to engage in. And when this truth takes root in your heart, you'll stop chasing apologies. You'll stop justifying your heart. You'll stop seeking room in lives that never made space for your soul. You will move forward quietly, gracefully, with your head lifted and your spirit whole, because you are no longer seeking validation from people. You are standing in the favor of God. God isn't asking for your reaction. He's asking for your surrender. He wants to be your defender when lies twist your name. He wants to be your voice when you're misrepresented. He wants to be your justice when you're wronged in silence. He wants to be your covering when others scheme behind closed doors, and the moment you place it all in His hands, He moves on your behalf. He vindicates, He promotes, not because you shouted the loudest, but because you trusted Him the most. Don't be afraid to let go. Don't be afraid to be misunderstood. Don't be afraid to stand alone. The company of people means little if their presence depletes your soul, but the presence of God means everything. Even when it's quiet, there's a sacred space in your soul where God resides. And when you stop responding to chaos, you begin to hear His whisper more clearly, that calm, certain voice that gently says, you don't have to fight. I already am on. Some were only meant to challenge your boundaries. Others came to expose what still wounds you. But once the lesson is clear, the tie must be severed. Do not stay beyond the peace. Do not pour where God has pulled back His favor. Do not remain where your soul can no longer breathe. Separation is not always harshness. It's often heaven's closure. And when God shuts a door, respect it. Don't plead for it to reopen. Don't lean in to catch the sound of a voice no longer destined for your journey. Move forward. You cannot become the person God designed you to be if you continue clinging to what He's asking you to release. You won't reach your calling carrying baggage from seasons already past. Let silence purify you. Let space renew you. Let distance restore your perspective. And in that still place, God will begin to speak what you were once too overwhelmed to hear. His direction, His warning, His promises, His counsel. He is preparing you for what comes next. And that preparation demands your attention. So move quietly, but not in fear. Remove toxicity, but keep your love. Draw lines, but don't harden your heart. Step back, but intercede sincerely, because leaving is not rejection. It's redirection. You are not abandoning people. You are turning your face toward the presence of God. And when you do, He will bless your obedience. He will mend what hurt you. He will raise what was hidden. And He will reveal the sacred purpose behind the silence. The world glorifies reaction. It thrives on strife. It exalts loud conflict and public spectacle. But the kingdom of God treasures peace. It honors self-control. It elevates wisdom. And in God's design, sometimes the strongest message is no message. The truest answer is peace. The loudest witness is choosing not to fight what no longer aligns with your calling. Let your life reflect the quiet strength of one who has discovered this truth. You don't always have to fight to win. Sometimes the greatest victory is found in letting go. So now I speak not just to your mind, but to your soul. The time has come, time to walk away from the noise that distracts you from your peace. Time to stop reacting to what was only sent to derail your calling. Time to break free from the cycles that depleted your spirit and return to the presence of God, where your restoration, your clarity, and your strength are waiting. Let today be your turning point, not through shouting, not through striving, not by proving anything, but by standing still, rooted in God's strength and declaring with quiet confidence, I will no longer respond to what was sent to destroy my peace. I belong to God. That is more than enough. Let your silence speak for you. Let your absence say what your words no longer need to justify. Let your obedience be louder than any self-defense. Because the moment you stop explaining, God begins revealing. The moment you stop chasing what was never yours, God begins releasing what has always been destined for you. But you must choose. Will you continue feeding what's draining your soul, or will you rise with heaven as your witness and walk away from everything that binds you? Do not let fear imprison your future. Do not let guilt dictate your direction. You owe no one more than what God has called you to give. Let them talk. Let them assume. Let them misinterpret your silence however they choose. Because at the end of the day, only one voice defines your life, God's. And when he whispers, come away with me, my child, come higher, you follow. No hesitation, no explanation, no audience required. The path to peace is narrow, and not everyone will understand it. But if God is walking that path with you, you will never walk in lack. Now search your heart. Who have you kept close simply out of habit, not because of divine purpose? What noise have you allowed to linger even though it's robbing you of peace? What spaces have you stayed in? Not out of calling, but out of fear of silence. This is your invitation to surrender. Surrender the attachments. Surrender the bitterness. Surrender the need to be understood by people who were never part of your purpose. Let it all fall away. Because what God has for you is sacred, and sacred things cannot survive in contaminated places. So walk with God, even if it means walking alone. Stand for him even when it costs you deeply, and speak with silence, knowing that God's justice will thunder louder than any argument, more accurate than any explanation, and more healing than any apology that never came. Let your peace speak on your behalf. Let your boundaries become prayers. Let your silence rise as worship. And let your life be living proof that when a soul chooses God over chaos, it finds not only power, but a peace this world cannot take away. Go now, with courage in your step. Go now with reverence in your spirit. Go now with unwavering confidence that when you choose quiet trust over loud reaction, you are not losing, you are rising. Heaven is watching. Earth is shifting. And God, your eternal defender, is already at work on your behalf. So guard your silence. Keep it holy. Walk forward. Keep it steady. Hold your heart. Keep it aligned with His. Because in the end, it will not be the noise that defines your story. It will be the unmistakable presence of God that surrounded you through it.